Hello, I'm Demi Utley, the founder here at Utley Strategies, and this is the next video in our series of proposal critiques. As part of the proposal critique series, I'm sharing real proposals that are submitted by people like you of up to 5 pages of their proposals, where I go through and share how I would change them or recommendations I have for the proposal. So that way we can all learn for ways that you can improve your proposals, and also you can get some insight into what other people's proposals look like as well. So let's go ahead and get started with today's proposal. Okay, so here we have our example proposal for this video. So I'm just going to go through and comment throughout the thing, and I will pause the video so that way you don't have to hear me reading or wait for me to read. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this one is starting with an executive summary, and I do like that it's opening with an understanding of the customer, which appears to be the county. One thing just to note is that there is a repetition here. So you say understanding here and then understand. So I personally would tweak that a little bit. Oops. My computer just hold on a second. Okay, so that's one change that I would make. The next thing that I would suggest is here it says that the program is a pivotal community-based initiative. I would actually say the specific program just to make it a little bit more specific. Then another thing that I would suggest for this opening paragraph, so I really like it, but we go from what the program is straight into the solution. So I would just pause here, and before you head into that, maybe have a sentence explaining why they need a company to help with this. So what is the challenge that they're facing? And then whenever you do that, that will set you up to be able to say, our company is positioned to help you because of these reasons. So just having like a sentence or two that bridges the two examples here. Okay, so in this second paragraph here, we have the same thing where we have proposed solution and then we also have propose. So I would just tweak that so that way it's not the same thing over and over. Um, but then another big question I have here, and this comes up a lot with something technical, or in this case, it's like kind of a scientific approach, is you list two, I guess, models or methodologies here, but there's no context for what exactly they are. And then in this sentence here, it says, this dual framework will enable all of these things, but we don't know exactly what these frameworks are. And unless they're specified in the RFP, I would assume that they don't either. And that's why they're hiring you. So I would just have a very brief explanation. It could be something, just like a one word descriptor of what these approaches are or something like that. So that way they have some context around why this is important. And I think if you do that, then because down here I like this explanation for why having a dual framework is important, but because we don't know what the frameworks are, it's like unclear exactly why that's a benefit. So I would just have a little bit of an explanation there to make it clear to the customer. Okay, another thing I would tweak in this executive summary is here you say iterative reporting cycles. I would actually change that to be more specific. So something like monthly reporting or quarterly reporting or whatever that is, just to make it clear exactly what those iterations are. Okay, then for the next part, we have a paragraph on cost. So for this, I would actually remove this and just have pricing information in the pricing section, unless it's required in the RFP to actually have it in the executive summary, because especially in the government space, a lot of times they require that cost information only be in the pricing section. So it's not standard practice to include it within the executive summary for these types of proposals. That's more for like investor proposals or, funding, sometimes grants, things like that. So for this, I would just take this out and move it to a different section. The other thing I would say is, unless they ask for this level of detail, I don't think you have to say, anticipating this type of inflation and all of that. That's something you can negotiate with them, but that's up to you. I haven't read this RFP, so if it says that level of detail, then I would include it. But again, I would not include it in the executive summary unless they specifically require it. Okay, then for the next part, we have a information on the project team. So it's saying the two types of roles and what they will do. Since this is an executive summary, I really want to see this really selling your company and showing why you're the best choice. So this information is kind of general about what exactly they would do. I would want to see more of what's unique about them. Are they, do they have certain certifications? Have they been doing this for a long time? Are they experts in the field? Anything to just share a little bit more information about your project team and why they are the best choice for this particular project for this particular customer. And if you don't have that level of detail, then I would take this out and include something else that's a descriptor for what differentiates you from your competitors. So that's what I would do with that one. And then I also just want to know, I really like down here that you say actionable recommendations, because it kind of shows, okay, we're going to give you something that you can take action on. So it's just a nice way to conclude this executive summary. Okay, so now we're in the experience section. So, one thing I want to point out is you say that you've done this work across various sectors. It seems like this is a government RFP. So, I would say you've done government work or public sector work just to make it a little bit more specific here. I also would say anything that has resulted from your research. So, for example, has your methodologies has all of this resulted in, a percentage of improved outcomes or any like actual metrics that you can include just to have something more tangible within your example here. And then here we have some project examples. So A program, B program, C program. I think that those are changed because again, this has to be anonymized since it's on the internet. So I would just link to these or say, see more details in certain section so that way they know what that is unless this is specific to the RFP. So that's one tweak that I would make to this part as well. Okay, so then coming down to methodologies and data collection techniques, it's interesting because by this point, we haven't really seen the customer mentioned. I don't think they've been mentioned at all actually on this page. So I would make sure that you're speaking to the customer. This is really focused on your company. So something easy that you can do is down here, you could say, instead of just saying we use both qualitative and quantitative methods, you could start with, to help the county achieve your goal of whatever the goal is, we will use both these methods and then lead into the sentence. So just to tie it back to the customer a little bit more, that way they're a part of this proposal and it feels like it's written for them versus it just being sort of a cookie cutter approach that you use for everyone. It's going to help you to stand out from your competitors and also make your pitch a little bit stronger. Okay, and then for this interviews and focus groups piece, I had a question of, is this in person? Is this virtual? Is this on their site? Is this at your office? If you can include details on that, I would add that here because this is the methodology section. So that's where you want them to actually start to kind of visualize what it's going to be like working with you. So I would describe that there. If the RFP mentions it, that might be why you don't have it. But even if it does, I would still just make it specific so they can actually see what's going to happen when they work with you. And then in the next part here, you say to quantify participant feedback and outcomes. So I personally would like to see a little bit more information around what exactly does that mean. So are you measuring the surveys? Like, how are you measuring that? You don't have to go into detail of what's in the survey, but what does that mean by quantifying their feedback? How are you tracking that? How does that result in the outcomes that they want to achieve? So I would just provide a little bit more information on that. And then in the last one, the statistical analysis, I think that this is good saying that you're going to measure the effectiveness of the interventions, but I want to see the customer again here. So what are their goals and how does this tie back to the goal of the actual RFP and how do you just, connect it to them and what they're trying to do versus having a general statistical analysis description. Okay, and then in this paragraph down here after all of those bullet points, it seems like you're saying, oops, it seems like you're saying here that based on the project, you're going to go through and choose which of these techniques will make sense for the project. But if that's not what you're saying, then it's not clear. But if that is what you're saying, then I would just reword this so that way it's a little more clear and specific. Because when I first read through it, it took me a few times to understand how this section connected back to the bullet points above. And that's not something that we want the evaluators to be doing. They're going to just kind of scan it, and then they might miss your point because they're like, I don't really know what that means. I'm just going to keep reading. So we don't want that to happen. Okay, and then down here, we actually get into the framework, which I had a question on above. So I think that this is a great way of explaining why you're using this framework. I would like to see a little bit more of an explanation of that in the executive summary. It could just be something really short, just to make it clear why this is important. And then also, this is still missing the customer, so this is really focused on your methodology and explaining it. And it would be nice to see it connected back to the customer and why this is important for this particular project. For example, do they have a diverse population? Is this part of one of their initiatives or their mission or something like that? Just really connecting it back to them and their goals so that way it aligns with them, because for some customers this might not be important, so we want to make sure that we're including this and showing like, hey, we understand your goals and what's important to you, and that's why we're talking about this approach. Okay, then so we have some bullet points, and then we jump into a new section. So I'd actually just add a conclusion sentence below these bullet points to kind of tie all of the thoughts together, just to make it a little easier to read and have a better flow within the content here. Okay, so then we go into data analysis and interpretation. So before we start with the information on your company, which is how it's doing here, I want to just kind of tie this back to the customer again, so that way they're a part of this proposal. So you could have a really simple sentence, something like, while gathering data is a crucial step, the analysis and interpretation is what will help the county to achieve whatever their goal is. So I would just make sure you're tying it back to, okay, this is why we're including information on data analysis and interpretation, and this is why this is important for your particular project. Okay, so then we have this little piece here. Seems like a really important aspect of this proposal because it's saying that it will provide a deeper understanding of participant experiences and contextual factors. So I think that this might be something unique with your approach. So if that's the case, then I would bold this or highlight it, or maybe make it a call out, or even have a subheading up above this paragraph that says that specifically. So that way, if they're just kind of quickly reading through this, they don't miss this sentence, because there is a lot of text in this proposal. So we want to make sure that we are making it easy for them to find your key points. And I think that this is a really good point to highlight. So just kind of thinking through that as you're reworking this proposal is, how can you actually go through and really emphasize that? And then the other thing I wanted to note in this paragraph is it says down here, and then it says enabling our clients to achieve targeted outcomes and improve program effectiveness. So again, this isn't general marketing information on your website. This is specific to, you're sending a proposal to a particular organization and a particular team. So I would just say their name here, or make it more specific to them however you can. That way it reads like it's written for them versus being something general. Okay, so then for this next section, I would still, the same feedback as above, make sure you're just adding the customer in where possible. So that way it reads like it's written for them, because it should be. And then I had a question when I was reading through this. It seems like these are chronological, like this is the order that you will do the work in the project, but your descriptions don't make that clear. So if that is the case, I would just make that obvious, so that way they know, oh, when we sign with you, this is what we can expect to happen, like the order that everything's going to go, and it makes the project just a little bit clearer. So for example, if you're doing this data cleaning, is that happening first? If so, then I'm assuming that's why you have it down here, crucial for reliable analysis. So just making sure that you're showing, okay, this is why we're doing this. I think that will help to make it a little bit clearer to the buyer. Okay, and then another question I had is down on number 5, visualization and reporting. It seems like everything else is kind of occurring behind the scenes, but then you say you use it to present insights, and then make them accessible for decision making. So in this case, it seems like the customer would be a part of this step. So just making that clear of, okay, now this is where we present our findings and help you to, make decisions and take action on whatever it is that we find. So just kind of tweaking that to make sure that the customer is a part of this and they can see how they're going to be involved in this project as well. And then I had a question down here. It says, we engage in a feedback loop with stakeholders to ensure that our insights remain relevant and adaptable. So it's unclear exactly what that means. Does that mean you are meeting with them like monthly or weekly? What does that look like? I would just have a little bit more information there. And then this last sentence, I would just tweak it a little bit because, again, the customer is missing from this. So I would just reword it so that way they're a part of that language and just tie it back to them. Okay, then we have statement of work, and it starts with a heading here of security and confidentiality of participant data. So I'm assuming this was a question or requirement from the RFP. If it was, that's fine. If there's a page limit and you have to go in this order, that's okay. If it's not specifically a question or requirement from the RFP, then I would just add a sentence or two at the beginning to kind of introduce the section so that way you're not just jumping right into this data piece. Then a question that I had, or I guess a comment of the first part here is the security of participant data. I would just make this more customer focused. So if this is a county, of the county's participants' data or the county's data or something like that. Then moving down, we have this school district data information. And I like that you say you have extensive experience working with them, even though you have not worked directly with the school district. But my question is, so if you have extensive experience working with data at the state level, then can you provide some more specifics? So have you worked with a lot of states, like multiple states? Have you worked with a state where they're located? How many years have you been working with a state? Like any sort of like actual metrics you can include here is going to make it a little bit stronger. Okay, then we have this intro to sample projects down here. So I think this is fine. I would maybe tweak the language a little bit, especially since you say you succinctly capture the scope. But this is mostly one sentence and it's 3 full lines. So that's not super succinct as that right there. So I would just reword this a little bit. And then I would also see if you can add more of mention of the customer. So for example, are these projects of similar size and scope? Are they similar customers? Things like that. The more specific you can be, the more helpful I think it will be for the buyer. And then let's just take a look at the specific examples down here. So I think that this is a nice way to show the projects, what happened, what you did, and then the outcome. I think this is a great way to show it. I would like to see a little bit more specificity in the outcomes. So you say it revealed insights into community needs and effectiveness, pinpointing areas such as funding, resource expansion, and things like that. So I wonder if you can say, so key areas such as funding, like was there a gap in the funding, like, a $5 million gap, or maybe they needed, some specifics for something. Like the more information you can show to actually show the results, I think the stronger that this is going to be. And then the same with this one. So you provided the customer key data on the intervention's impact. So what type of data, or what does that look like? And how did you measure the effectiveness? Were there any like actual metrics? Because I know you said quantitative and qualitative data as part of this project. So is there anything you can share from the quantitative side of things that's actual like metrics to show like, hey, we found this result? I think that will help to show, the effectiveness and the results and the outcome of this type of project. Okay, so that's all that I had for this example. If you would like to participate, then you can share up to 5 pages of one of your proposals. I have information in the description below. If you'd like more of a full proposal review, we do have proposal audits available, which I link to below this video as well. And in the meantime, make sure you subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you next time.